Evening and welcome to a brand new and also a special edition of Face to Face coming to you tonight from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Bringing you Face to Face this evening, I'm Jayamal Ratnayaka for the Newsfirst team. Now, as our viewers might understand and know, Face to Face is primarily a political talk show where we bring public representatives to gather their insight and opinions on matters that concern Sri Lanka and thereabouts. However, in the realm of national interest and in the larger context, we do invite personalities and characters who are contributing to Sri Lanka's economy to gather their insights when it comes to the development of Sri Lanka and also primarily at present the upcoming presidential election. And in that vein, tonight we have decided to invite to our studios the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Duminda Hulangamuwa. Mr. Hulangamuwa, thank you very much for joining me this evening and accepting our invitation to be on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Jayamal, to this program.
Certainly. Mr. Hulangamuwa, you are the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, one of the oldest institutions in the Asia-Pacific region. It was established in 1839 and it has spearheaded the development of the business sector. And one would also agree with me if I say that you are the voice of Sri Lanka's private sector. And over the years, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has taken many groundbreaking initiatives to take Sri Lanka's private sector's voice and amplify it, make it heard in the local and also the foreign arena. In that vein, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has organized Sri Lanka's first ever debate on economic policy with representatives of the four main presidential candidates who will be running on the 21st of September. So, Mr. Hulangamuwa, I will let you do the introduction for this debate. Can you tell us when this debate will be happening, what time it will be happening, who the representatives will be from each political candidates, and who the moderators will be on that day?
So, thank you, Jayamal, for inviting me for this program, and MTV. It's always a pleasure to be here. So, as you said, this is the first time that debate of this nature has been organized. So, the representatives will be the four main candidates.
Right.
That is Honorable Shahan Semasinghe will represent the Honorable President. Honorable Dr. Harsha De Silva will represent Honorable Sajid Premadasa. Then Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma will represent the Honorable Anukumar Disanayaka from the NPP. And Dr. Ranjit Bandara will represent the Honorable Namal Rajapaksa.
Understood.
From the SLPP. And the event will be held on Thursday,
29th
of August at 9 a.m. We're trying to finish it by 10:30.
Right, at the BMICH.
At the BMICH. The event will be moderated by myself as the chairman of the chamber, and my fellow board member, Kasturi Chelaraja, will moderate the session.
So, Mr. Hulangamuwa, before we move into the nitty-gritty of the conversation, will this event be live streamed via social media for anyone who can't make it on that day to access it?
Yes, it will be live streamed on the chamber Facebook page. All television channels have been invited, and they can hook on to our Facebook page, and it will be live streamed for people to watch it who cannot participate at the event
physically. Can you also brief us about the structure of this event? We know it's only a 1.5 hour event for all four representatives to present their policies. How will the structure be formed?
So the structure, what we have formed is there will be 7 minutes allocated to each candidate, each representative of the candidate, where they can articulate their economic policy. We are only debating on the economic policy. We are not getting to other areas as well because this time is very limited. So each representative will present their policy for 7 minutes. Then thereafter we will be having a question and answer session, a moderated question and answer session. So there won't be any questions given to the audience or the public.
I see.
The questions will be raised by myself and Kasturi. And each candidate will be given 4 questions with 3 minutes each, precise timing. And they can answer those questions. Some questions can be repeated questions, some can be questions unique to them.
Right.
So the questions are not given in advance, it's be only spur of the moment.
I see.
There can be some kind of probing taking place as well, depending on the answers we get. And thereafter, once we finish the Q&A session, we'll have 5 minutes allocated to each candidate or represent each candidate to counter the answers or the policies of the other candidate.
I see.
So 5 minutes each, 20 minutes allocated for that as well, so that if someone doesn't disagree or have to, an opposing view or to want to question another person, that also is permitted at the last part of the debate.
Yeah. Quite an expansive agenda, although it's in the span of 1.5 hours.
Yes, we are trying to finish in 1.5 hours.
Understood. Yeah. Understood. So, Mr. Hulangamuwa, these decisions to the decision rather to hold a debate of this nature, although the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has been in place and operational for many decades, this is the first time that such a debate is taking place. Why did the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce believe that this was the optimal moment to hold such a debate instead of maybe election years such as 2019, 2015 and previously? What was the thinking behind this?
Yeah, so the thinking, so I don't think it is, I mean, it's an evolutionary process, right? I mean, so you do different things at different times.
Understood.
So one of the main reasons why we thought we should have a debate of this nature is because in the past, we or any civil society organization, I think for that matter, didn't get much involved or to contest the policies of each party. This time Ceylon Chamber took a very conscious decision that it will scrutinize and question the policies and the manifestos of each political party, because we feel that if you don't question them, you know, be accountable and tell them how they're going to implement them, we can face a similar situation what we faced in 2022. We don't want to go back to that stage.
Yes.
So we want to make them responsible, make them, when they plan their policies, when they give their manifestos, to announce to the people what they can really do within the environment that they are operating in. Not to give promises that cannot be met. So we want to question on those. That's the reason why we thought this year we have to engage the political parties, the main political parties, prior to the election rather than doing a post-mortem, so that we at least tell the business community, this is what these guys are going to do, and you can decide which one is the best and who has the best policy, best plan within the parameters that we are currently engaged. That's the reason why it's a launch of this year. We must engage these people before the elections.
And you hope to continue this process
in
future elections as well?
So actually, prior to this event, how it culminated to this is that the Ceylon Chamber this time produced the Vision 2030 document,
right?
Which is a 5-year plan for Sri Lanka to achieve certain goals by end of 2030.
Right.
So our objective is to make sure whoever comes into government 21st, we have created a plan, a policy framework that can be accepted to all political parties.
Okay.
This has been developed by our members
by
who
the
are
business
engaged
community.
in business community, who are engaged in business into 18 sectors, ranging from agriculture to shipping to tourism to manufacturing to banking, finance. Every single sector has been covered by people in this. So we have developed, we want to keep it very simple, we have developed 5 policies enablers, which means what are the 5 things that a new government must do for each of the industries,
okay,
and what are the consequence of those 5 proposals we have given in order for us to achieve certain macro targets by 2030. What are those targets? A GDP of growth rate of 6.5%.
Right.
We want to be a bit more optimistic than what has been prescribed by the IMF. A 6.5% by 2030. Per capita income of $4,800 by 2030.
Okay.
Debt to GDP of 80%. Export to import of 30%. The tax to GDP ratio of 14%, IMF is 15%, we said 14%.
Right.
So those macroeconomic targets have been set for 2030.
Okay.
So in order to go towards that, what needs to be done in the next 5 years, what we have given. So this debate is organized in that context because we have shared this document with all 4 political parties.
Okay.
Just with the governor of the Central Bank, we gave it to him. So all have accepted our policy in principle. We feel that if they follow these policies, we can achieve these targets by 2030. So that those are the framework for organizing the debate is the backdrop is this 2030 vision that we are given to the political parties.
Understood. So, Mr. Hulangamuwa, regardless of what happens on the 21st of September and whoever is selected or elected as the president of Sri Lanka, they have a Herculean task because clearly Sri Lanka is not out of the woods yet. We are yet to reach debt sustainability. We have, although implemented our debt restructuring program, but Sri Lanka is still coming out of the woods. And in your personal opinion, I want you to take the hat of the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce out and put the hat of the corporate leader on and tell me, what the most critical issues you believe that the next president will have to deal with and also address as soon as he takes office?
Yeah, so the most critical issue we foresee is to make sure that who is elected stays in the four corners of the IMF agreement. I don't think there's any room to go outside the parameters they have given us. So in order for us to achieve that sustainability, we need to be compliant with parameters that have been prescribed.
So are you completely dispelling the notion of a renegotiation with the IMF?
I think because I have also sat at discussions with IMF,
right,
as a part of the chamber, and we have asked for all these concessions that we have been asking, but they were not giving. So I doubt whether there's any space for negotiating. Okay. Is my view, but it might differ. It might differ, but my view is that because if we are going to change the parameter, then if we are in negotiation, we have to change the parameters.
Yes.
So we had to then say, okay, we are now going to do 2.5% of primary account surplus by 2025, but we are going to 1.5% or less than that.
Right.
Then how are we going to bridge the deficit?
It's a ripple effect.
Yeah. Are you going to print money or are you going to borrow? So print money not possible because the new Central Bank Act, I mean, up to a certain point you can, but limited.
Yes.
If you go to borrow to the market, once again your debt will go up and your debt sustainability is affected. Number two, also, it will drive inflation, it will drive interest rates up. So either way you are paying in some form or the other.
Yes.
So we understand and respect that people have difficulties because the taxes have been increased. Fuel is charged based on market prices, electricity on market prices. Then if you take the exchange rate got depreciated, but we have achieved a degree of stability, the macro fundamentals. So we need to make sure that those are maintained, right? And we don't sort of try to change things a lot that will not be acceptable to the IMF. Because if we are moving out of this IMF agreement, we are in deep trouble. I can tell you that in 1 year, 2 years time, we'll face the same consequence. So we have to make sure that we stay with that program and the rest of it is happening. So of course we need to bring growth. So growth won't come if the fundamentals are not good. We need to make sure if foreign investors are going to come to this country that we have a stable exchange rate, we have a stable interest rate, we have a stable inflation rate. Those fundamentals are perfect so that they can come invest in this country again. That is why we should, I mean, it's a difficult thing to do overnight. So next president's real task is to take a stock of this and make sure that we walk on the correct path.
All right. So there were certain arguments or opinions being expressed that the IMF agreement that we have struck now is not the most optimal or the most favorable IMF agreement that Sri Lanka could have entered into. But regardless, we are in the extended fund facility program that is being governed by the IMF. Tell me, are you satisfied with the parameters that have been set by the IMF and the debt restructuring process that Sri Lanka is currently undergoing?
Yeah. So if I think, in my view, the targets given by IMF are fairly moderate, or rather modest. Because you see, the issue is, I don't think what is the assurance we can give the creditors that we are able to pay their debts even after a restructuring is done if we don't have sufficient income that we generate within ourselves. If we have sufficient foreign reserves that we build up over a period of time. So the issue is, I think it is not for the IMF, in my view it is us to say. IMF is only a third party. They are only saying to us, look, if you want to come to me, these are my conditions. And if I certify these things, your creditors will also accept it. So it's a three-party thing. So I think the conditions they have put are, not based on whether you like something or not, right? Because the choices are very limited. Right, we have 120% of GDP. We can run high GDP. We can run higher debt, so long as we can pay it. So if you don't have sufficient reserves to pay it, if you don't have sufficient income to pay it, then the choice is ours. So then we have to cut expenditure, because I may not talk about expenditure.
Yes.
So then we have to cut expenditure. In my view, is also not very discretionary expenditure, also non-discretionary to a large extent.
Yes.
So we have to increase revenue. So if you are going to increase revenue, you have to bring growth to increase revenue, or you increase tax rates. One of the two. I mean, expand the base has been hackneyed topic. Everyone is talking without having a proper plan to how to increase the. So unless you increase some extreme digitalization measures, you can't do it. So in that context, I think the agreement is reasonable, is my view.
Right. So you mentioned tax rates a couple of times while you were explaining your sentiments and giving your opinion. Do you believe that the current tax structure, which came into effect from January this year, especially VAT and also corporate taxes, I believe are at like 30% now, is the most ideal tax structure that Sri Lanka can implement? Or do you believe that tax administration, like you mentioned, should be made more robust and technology should be introduced to tax administration? What sort of a contribution should the private sector give to Sri Lanka's revenue generation plans?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, I don't think the current tax rates, if you ask me as a taxpayer, is not the best. Right. I mean, 36%, we never had 36%. I mean, we had 45-50% from the time that we remember we came to workforce. We didn't have a 36% tax rate, so we were used to lower tax rates. I don't think Sri Lanka, the ideal rate is the 18% either. I would say about 24%, 25% would be a competitive rate with reasonable slabs. 36% is on the high side. But given the situation, there's no choice. So in that case, if you want to reduce the tax rates, as I told you, two things have to be done. Economy must grow at a very high rate. Two, we must cut our expenditure. So if of our total expenditure of about recurrent expenditure of about 3 trillion, close to 3 trillion, bulk of it non-discretionary. Public sector salaries had to be paid, pensions had to be paid, welfare had to be maintained, hospitals had to be maintained, free education had to be maintained. So those will all cost. So you can't reduce that cost overnight. So given this, and then of course you have the interest that will come into that. On top of that, about 2.7 trillion of interest will come even under suspension. So then we need some space, fiscal space, to reduce the taxes. So at the moment, given the expenditure, there is no space. So what if you ask me, is it too high? I think it's too high. I mean, even all of us are paying very high taxes, but VAT is the same, right? So I think the VAT, in my view, the exemptions over a period of time you must remove. That's the policy of the chamber. But 18% of the rates. If you can remove the exemptions
in some of the sectors,
in most of the sectors, and bring the rate down to 12%, then everyone pay 12%. We're better than 18% on some and 0 on others. So I think 18% on the high side for consumption. Then we have 2.5% of social security contribution levy. So all that about 20% already. If you go to a restaurant and eat today, you pay 30-32% as service charge and taxes. That's very high. So in order to reduce that, then we must remove the exemption. We can't have exemptions at the same time. We can't have lower rates. So if you are going to give electricity exemption, fuel exemption, then we can't have lower rates also, right? So one or the other. So my suggestion would be for it to have a lower rates and a wider base. And more people in the VAT system will also increase the income tax collection, because VAT system is more robust as compared to the system of the department. So then more people in the income tax net to fight to tax. The second question, tax administration is also a hackneyed topic. I mean, it's not easy as you say, right? But digitalization is one way that you can. That's why we are chamber is really advocating with the government, and I think the government took a decision to go ahead with the digitalization, digital ID project. When I say digital ID project, I'm not talking of just computerized ID card only. That is to build the backbone and the network for digitalization. So all most transactions with banks, with register of motor vehicles, with land registry, all can be linked. The information can be shared with a common database. So I think once you get to that, only you can increase tax collection. But manually, you can't do it.
So talking about these macroeconomic fundamentals, especially we saw the central bank governor speaking today, saying that they hope to maintain inflation at around 7% or whatnot in the foreseeable future. And we saw how inflation soared during 2022 and 2023, making it almost unbearable for a majority of the economy or a majority of the citizenry to run their daily lives. So what sort of measures should be implemented and taken into account to manage inflation while also trying to spur on economic growth?
Yeah, so that's it's a catch-22 situation, right? So if you have basically low inflation, means low budget deficits, no printing, less borrowing by government. So then inflation is low, but your growth can get impacted. So if you have high growth, there will be more consumption. Now that's why the government deliberately kept the interest rates high, inflation high, because they want to make sure consumption is reduced to control inflation. So now if you allow consumption to increase by reduce. As I told you, if you reduce taxes, consumption will go up.
Yes.
But that will drive inflation, right? So either way you pay. Okay. So the only way we can control inflation, like in Western countries, at single digit, and also get growth, is to make sure that our macro fundamentals are stable. We have enough foreign reserves. We have a stable exchange rate. We have reasonable interest rates. So once those things are in place, the FDIs will come in. So we need to, and our growth also must come, in my view, through FDI, because Sri Lankan 22 billion population can't grow by 7-8% with the 22 billion population. So we can grow by about 3-4% per annum. But to get the next level of growth, we need the international trade. So we need to link up on international trade, and we have to get the FDIs into the country.
Right.
Now, FDIs are to come to the country, fundamentals can be in place, but then still we must make sure that doing business is very easy here. Now, if you are going to expand manufacture, because Sri Lanka does not have a big manufacturing base, because we don't have the critical mass, we don't have the resources, we don't have the raw material. So we'll have to be a country where you import raw material, convert, minor processing, conversion, and re-export. And value addition. That's the only way we can go. For that to operate, we must make sure we have dedicated zones for exports. We must make sure that infrastructure is proper, the electricity connection, the water connections, the pollution controls is proper. Then import and export has to be it has to be single window. You can't have multiple approval levels.
Institutions.
Customs must be more robust and efficient than what they are now. We are having so many manual documentation at customs to clear cargo. So those things can't happen. We have to have very simple, like Vietnam. You bring in, manufacture, and export. So to get to that model, without getting that model, you can't get the FDI to manufacturing sector. So then where do you get the FDI? Until that such time that takes place, is we have to see what is our thrust industries. As far as the chamber is concerned, we have found the 3 thrust industries where Sri Lanka can really an advantage of others is shipping and logistics.
Right.
So we must be able to build our ports more, and the logistics
use of
and
our
the
strategic location.
Yes, and the bunkering facilities to all the we went for a forum where the speaker said our capacity of bunkering is 60,000 tons. Singapore is 20 million. So if you are developing a shipping logistic business, we must bring the associated infrastructure around it as well, and then we can be converted into a. Now we are doing 6.5 million tons. Singapore is 39 million. So if we get to that level, we have to build infrastructure around it. So shipping logistics, one area we think is a real seller.
Key sector.
2, we need to get to tourism to the next level of. I mean, not to get 20 million tourists, but a reasonable tourists and get them to spend more. So activities that they can spend on, create more activities for them. And 3rd is the IT BPO industry. Sri Lanka has so many professionals, graduates passing out. Every institution has so many. CIM has 20,000, CA has 25,000.
Yes.
So all the people can be produced to serve the world and get foreign. And those are the 3 areas we think that we have a catalyst. Manufacturing is tough because of our resources and our critical mass we don't have to manufacture, and we can't give 25,000 acres of facility for someone to come and put up a factory here. So because of those things we have limitations, so we need to therefore see where we can sell things and market those areas. Is what we are telling the future governments in to come, concentrate, take the low hanging fruits and go on these lines.
Right. So you came to a very interesting point in our conversation regarding FDIs, and you mentioned that organic growth, although is possible, will be tough for us, and we need external cash injections to grow our economy in the future. So as you mentioned, there are various barriers to entry for any concerned investor to come into Sri Lanka and invest. That is why one reason I believe that Sri Lanka has had such a low number of investors, and also at the same time there is a lot of ambiguity regarding the investors who are coming into Sri Lanka with regard to the transparency and how favorable a certain investment will be to Sri Lanka as opposed to the investing party. So what sort of considerations must a future government or a future president pay regard to or consider when it comes to these factors, especially establishing, like you said, a one-stop shop? Because we know, although the BOI is in place, there are so many institutions and associated institutions that one must obtain approvals from to establish a particular manufacturing plant or a business. So tell me and talk to me about those considerations in your expertise, and also what you've heard from the business sector, what their sentiments are on how we can improve this.
So you are absolutely right. So when it comes to FDI, we must make sure that we have consistent policies. We can't have policies that keep changing every year. So on the policy side, now for example, the new Electricity Act has got passed, and there are certain roadmaps that are developed by the Electricity Board for the increase of power in Sri Lanka and what areas investments are permitted. So I think those things we must have a long-term policy. Successive governments could every 5 years change these policies, then there is no continuity. No one is going to come and invest here. So on the policy side, if you contact Vietnam, it's a communist country. China is a communist country, not democratic country, right? No free speech. People are saying those have to be there, no, but I don't think. But those countries attract $47 billion of revenue, FDI, Vietnam. Indonesia is a democratic country, but it has its own problems, but $17 billion of... So why? Because their investment policies are consistent. You know, so political parties can come to power and go, but they don't change policy. Now in Sri Lanka, what happens? 21st whoever takes over, he'll want to change the reverse it completely.
Yeah, renege on everything.
Yeah. So then when that happens, all the approvals that have been pending, all the work that have been done by the government department institutions to attract investments, all that is
left in the dust.
Yeah, right. So we need to make sure first we have policy consistency by all three political. That's why we prepare 2030 vision document and give to all the parties to make sure that they act on those matters. They act nationally. There is no difference between the two of them. That is very important. Any FDI that comes to Sri Lanka, irrespective of party, we can operate our business. That's very important. Second is the operational side that you have to mention. That is getting the approvals and clearances. We have so many different departments, agencies. Sometimes you require about 15, 16 approvals to set up business in Sri Lanka. So those have to be streamlined. And you know, I remember, I don't think you were there that time, and I mean the time that investment was seamless and everything happened so smoothly. That I remember in my living history was when President Premadasa was the president.
Okay.
I mean the 200 government factory program was seamless.
The 1980s.
In 92. Seamless. I mean the approvals were given because of course it came through presidential power. So all the departments were in one place. I remember going with investors to the boardroom of the BOI and single day all the approvals
sign-offs were given.
Yeah. So for that you need a strong government, you need a strong leadership and strong vision for that. So the visionary leader is necessary for that. So I think that is the only time that happened in that way. So of course that is because we individual, but we should not go on individuals. We should go on an institutionalized system for that. So then you can eliminate corruption, you eliminate unfair bidding, unfair tendering, you know. Now Sri Lanka is also known for that. We also make sure that we should not get unsolicited proposals, tendering processes follow, our procurement process is pure, you know. So we are known for that as well. So those are operational issues. So I think we need to make sure that those things don't happen. And this institution, multiple institutions that get approval from is also removed. So or we have one place that approves everything. So we need to put those things in place. I told you, to clear carbon customs, there are about 10 documents that we enter. So those you can't operate in modern world there, and it's all manual, right? We don't have anywhere in the world. Yeah. So we need to make sure we get those things sorted. If they are going to talk of an investment, forget Vietnam and Indonesia, at least $5-6 billion of a year. We need to think differently and do things differently.
Understood. I'm in conversation with Mr. Duminda Hulangamuwa, the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. We have to cross over for a short commercial break. Do stay tuned to Face to Face. We will be right back.
Newsfirst, Face to Face with Jamal Ratnayaka.
ජනප්‍රිය ගායන ශිල්පී ප්‍රවීන් සුරංගගේ නවතම ගීතය Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube ඇතුළු ඔබගේ ප්‍රියතම සංගීත සේවාවන් හරහා රස විඳින්න.
Entertainments.
Step away from the conventional art of storytelling. Get ready for the Newsfirst Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfikar Farzan.
ජනප්‍රිය ගායන ශිල්පී ප්‍රවීන් සුරංගගේ නවතම ගීතය Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube ඇතුළු ඔබගේ ප්‍රියතම සංගීත සේවාවන් හරහා රස විඳින්න.
entertainments.
ඇයි හෙක්ට නිශ්ශබ්ද ඉන්නේ? මේක මීඩියාකින් උස්සලා ගහන්නකෝ.
මේ සිටුේෂන් එක අපි පොලිස් ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් එකට හැන්ඩල් කරන්න පුළුවන්.
ඌට මොකද්ද තියෙන බලේ මේ නිකන් ඉන්න අහිංසක මිනිස්සුන්ට ගහන්න මං ආන්නේ.
මේ රටේ මිනිස්සු අපේ මුණට කෙල ගහන්න ඔන්න මෙන්න කියලා බලාගෙන ඉන්නේ.
කවුරු අපේ බයිට් එකට ගත්ත වෙන්න බැරි.
මේ මැස්සා අද රාත්‍රී 9ට සිරස TV තුලින්.
සිම්පත හරියට ලියාපදිංචි කරගෙන තියෙන්න ඕන. සමහරව එහෙම දන්නෙත් නැහනේ.
මේ සිම්පත කොයි තරම් වැදගත්ද කියලා මේ දුරකථන පාවිච්චි කරන හැම දෙනාම දන්නේ නැහැ කියලා තමයි මම කියන්නේ.
මැයි වලින් පස්සේ ලොකු ගංවතුර තත්ත්වයක් එන්න නියමිතයි කියලා. කාලගුණ විද්‍යාඥයින් අනතුරු අංගවන පසුබිමක ඔබ කොයි විදිහටද මේ අපේ තෙත්බිම් සම්බන්ධයෙන් දකින්නේ?
කොළඹ නගරයේ තියෙන නාගරික තෙත්බිම් වලින් 21%ක් තියෙන නාගරික තෙත්බිම් වලින් වැසි ජලයෙන් 39%ක් රඳවා ගන්න බව.
දැන් විලත් නගරයේ කටයුතු කරන කට්ටිය දැන් එනවා පරිපාලනය නගරයට. ඔතුමේ දන්න හැටි අපි ගත්තොත් තලවතුකොට එහෙම නැත්නම් කිඹුලවල ප්‍රදේශයේ අපිට තියෙනවා රැයට කෑම කඩ. ඉස්සර එක තිබ්බ කොහෙද? කොළඹ. දැන් ගොඩ දෙනෙක් මේ පැත්තට එන්න පටන් ගන්නවා. මොකද ඒගොල්ලන්ට අර පොළ පාට ගතිය. මේ තියෙන බ්‍රීස් එක කියන්නේ ඇඟට දැනෙන වෙනස අනිවාර්යෙන් දැනෙනවා.
ජාතික මෙහෙවර සතියේ දිනවල උදෑසන 11ට.
Caught in the Net. Enjoy 2 hours of rip-tickling British humor, Ray Cooney's hilarious comedy. Caught in the Net, presented by the Pete Wrights Art Foundation. Produced by Jerome L. De Silva. On 30th, 31st August and 1st of September at Lionel Wen Theatre. Media sponsors, TV1 ESFM.
Newsfirst, face-to-face with Jamal Ratnayaka.
Welcome back to Face to Face. I am in conversation with Mr. Duminda Hulangamuwa, the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Before we headed into our break, we were having a very insightful conversation on everything ranging from Sri Lanka's macroeconomic stability, taxation, foreign direct investments and so on. I have, in fact, quite a lot of questions that I must pose to Mr. Hulangamuwa because he is very well seasoned in this arena and has a wealth of knowledge. So, Mr. Hulangamuwa, we touched upon accessing the digital economy in Sri Lanka, how important it is to ensure that processes are digitized, digitalization is introduced to initiatives and processes here in Sri Lanka. How important is the digital economy to the broader vision of Sri Lanka, and what steps should an incoming president or a government take to foster innovation and the digital transformation in Sri Lanka?
No, I think it's of absolute and paramount importance, Jamal. Now, if you, what we lack, for example, if you take the assessment program, for it to be successful, it has to reach the most deserving people. I'm sure it must be happening that way, I can't comment on it. But for it to be more robust and transparent and to be efficient, it has to reach the correct person at the correct time.
Yes.
So if you have the digital IT program, what the government is actually talking with the Indian government, that project will create that backbone infrastructure where everything will be based on identity card. And that's what India is working, right? Whether you want to disperse funds, whether you want to monitor progress of projects, whatever, I think the digital backbone will be digitalization is the backbone of that story. So ASFAS is one area. Now, for example, there are a lot of allegations ASFAS is not going to the correct person, it's not going to the correct time, it's lost halfway. So I
politicized.
And then there are what 80,000 people monitoring it, right, from Gram Sevak to Gram Nidadar to the police officers to Govijana Sevak, everyone is monitoring it, right? Yes. So why it is such inefficient? Then second thing, for example, if you say, now if you want to get a customs registration, to open a tin, you have to go to the Gram Sevaka. If I am going to, I have to go to Gram Sevaka, and Gram Sevaka, why and here to certify that I am Duminda Hulangamuwa.
Yes.
And then I had to take that to the Division Secretariat office. Then they also do some certification. Then I come back to the Gram Sevaka, and then I go to the customs. Now just imagine the time and effort that one has to spend in doing that process.
Yes.
And then also the documentation involved, filing of the document. Now, why do I go to the Gram Sevak is because he has to certify that I am so and so. And the customs then only accepts that.
Yes.
Now, if this were digitalized, then they actually for me to visit Gram Sevak, I go to customs, they know I am Duminda Hulangamuwa, my identity card appears, they register, right? So you can shorten the entire process. You can save so much of money. and these grammar savers can put to better use. You can repurpose them, not to send them home. You repurpose the effort. So similarly, I can give you so many examples where you can cut the time and the effort that you take in a process. We are very manual driven still, Sri Lanka. Motor vehicle registration department. So all over, it's very.
It can be all interconnected eventually.
And then when you take, for example, if you take the Inland Revenue Department, now we are all talking tax revenue collection. If this digital IDs or ID digitalized, where you capture the transactions at any point that you want, then you can see the department on the screen can see that Mr. Hulangamuwa has spent so much of money, gone overseas, or he has bought a car, or he has bought a land, but there's no tax file. Even now they can manually do it. But then how much has to go through one by one and check it, right?
How practical is it?
It's not, So here, because you millions of transactions they're talking. Interest income that accumulates banks, there are at least 10-15 million deposit holders in Sri Lanka, and all the interest can't be checked by the department on a single day. So if we digitalize, so much can be done. Revenue collection of the government can increase. Government projects can be made more effectively, and more than anything else, public at large can obtain services at much lesser price, lesser time. Government can save so much of money. The entire public service you're talking of can be repurposed for different items, because most of them are manually operated functions, right? If you take customs, it's a classic example. Everything is manual still, right? So all that must get digitalized. I mean, how much have India progressed in terms of implementation of so many projects, as well as revenue collection, banking system connection, all this because of high digitalization. So we need to definitely go on that path. There is no way that we cannot do that. Now, if you take the banking industry in Sri Lanka, how much they've spent and invested on digitalization, we are way of more regional banks because we invest that money. And today, banking, if you do manually, you are not in business. So that's the example I'm giving you. So there are so many I can quote where digitalization is the platform in the future of this country. Definitely.
Understood. So moving on to another key sphere, I believe Sri Lanka is lagging behind, especially when it comes to integration with regional powers, particularly India, because it is our closest neighbor, is the access to supply chains. And we know in today's world, one certain product is not manufactured in a particular country alone. There are so many components that have been flowed into that particular product coming together. And India, I believe, has tapped into the supply chain market, or the larger supply chain, very tactfully, and it is now reaping the fruits of their labor. But Sri Lanka still hasn't seemed to be able to tap into that supply chain, at least hang on the coattails of India and piggyback off what India has managed to achieve in that particular realm. So how important is regional integration, especially when it comes to trade, opening up Sri Lanka, getting access to supply chains to deliver or to supply certain components for products? Talk to me about that as well, Mr. Hulangamuwa.
I mean, absolutely important. You see, as I told you, if Sri Lanka is to grow by 7-8%, we have to become a country that is doing international trade. With domestic agriculture and domestic manufacture, you can't grow that part. Our population is really small. So, if you are to go in international markets for both trading goods and services, we have to be competitive. And how do we become competitive? We have to be competitive in terms of pricing, in terms of quality, in terms of delivery. When you are trading international markets, so how do you get that competitive advantage? Is that you become more efficient. So to become efficient, you need to have, as I told you earlier, see if you're talking of goods, manufacturing goods, we need access to markets. Now, one way in bringing access to markets is through free trade agreements. But it has to be both ways. It can't be one way only, right? So one way of bringing advantages through FTAs, where you get access to markets on concessional basis. But that alone won't be enough. You see now, if you take, we recently signed the FTA with Thailand, and there are so many items that are in the list that we can export to Thailand. But I was talking to some industrialists after it was signed as to whether they are exporting now goods to Thailand. And what this person told me, one of the largest manufacturers of garments in Sri Lanka, is that even under concessionary duty, we can't match Thai prices, because we have not got the cost efficiencies that we need. Our electricity costs have to be competitive. We need to have better output. We can't have lead time. We need to have good transport system. So efficiency, import system must be efficient. So efficiency is one that will bring you the advantage, not really the FTAs. If you are competing with those countries, so FTAs are necessary. So if you are going into, if you are, as I earlier told you, our supply chain has to be very good, because if Sri Lanka, unlike India, I mean India you can't even compare.
Yes.
Because India one is a huge market, 1.5 billion people, 1.5 billion people, plus India has a lot of resources, access to raw material, which we don't have. So if we are to survive in this global competitive world, we must make sure that whatever goods that come, we have to get into supply chain system, as you said. We have the local infrastructure here in place, plug in and play. You bring the item, process and send out. That is only that we can get into, because we don't have raw materials for that. So for that we need supply chain, we need FTAs to send to those countries, but more than FTAs, we have to be competitive in terms of our pricing and efficiency, and the quality of product has to be good in order to manifest. So, but it will be both ways. Unless Sri Lanka opens up, we can't enter that competition, because once you open up, only you know what the competition is. So it has to be both ways, import and export both.
So very quickly, do you believe Sri Lanka's economy has reached peak liberalization, or is there more space for Sri Lanka's economy to open up to the world?
No, I think we have liberalized almost all. We have restrictions only in areas of defense, coastal fishing, pawnbroker, whatever reason it may be, and retail trade, which I think is okay. I don't think retail trade you can invest if you more than $5 million. So those are okay. And shipping is also, shipping agencies are controlled to the extent 40% only foreigners can invest. But only in agency business, that's okay. I don't see much of a problem in that, because the rest of it is opened up.
Right, understood.
So I think we are fairly liberalized in most industries, and I don't think that's the bottleneck. The bottleneck is get the administration and operational policy issues straight.
Understood. Although I have several more questions to pose to Mr. Hulangamuwa, because we are running out of time, I want to address this concern as well. When you take Sri Lanka's workforce, we know that there are two key sectors, the private sector and the state sector. And one common ideology when it comes to Sri Lanka's state sector is that it is marred with inefficiencies, it is bloated, and the processes are very manual. But that is the complete opposite when it comes to Sri Lanka's private sector, because it is all based on performance management, reaching newer heights and whatnot. And that, I believe, gives rise to the importance of entering into private-public partnerships. And Sri Lanka has a history of entering into such agreements, and we have success stories in many industries. Tell me how important it is for a government, an incoming president, or even the incumbent government, although it is slated to change or whatnot in the coming days, how important it is for a government to integrate with the private sector, maintain a constant dialogue, have knowledge sharing platforms and sessions, and take Sri Lanka's economy to the next level by initiating private-public partnerships.
Well, I think that's an important point. Public-private partnership is the way that most countries develop the infrastructure. If you take countries like the Western countries, with initially open up their highways, expressways, autobahns, whatever you call them, the airports, ports, were all on PPP basis. So they opened up the capital for private investment to come in, and the government gave the land or whatever the other support they can. India, for example, most of the most recent investments in infrastructure, especially roads, network, and railways on a PPP basis. So I think a government can't be in business, must exploit the resources as much as possible. At the same time, the government should have a control on certain areas. So I believe in areas like transport, shipping, there is enough scope for PPPs in this country. I don't think what we have done is enough at all, in my view. Our PPPs have been largely confined to power generation and shipping and large shipping, right? The shipping terminals. But there's more scope. I think we can go for roads. I think the most important in my view is railway transport.
I see.
I think after the British left, I don't think we have put up a single railway line.
We haven't upgraded our network.
So I think there's tremendous potential to improve the railway system of this country. And I don't think the Ceylon, Sri Lanka Railways has the money to invest. The service has been going down, the quality has, except for a few trains they put for tourists, the overall quality has gone down. The engines that we have are about 70, 80 years old. Tracks are not upgraded. So I think I don't think government has space to invest in. I think there is a lot of space to invite foreign. I don't Sri Lankan private sector also can't afford that kind of money. I mean, how many companies can put a $200, $300 million? It's not a lot. Only few can do that. So if you are going for large scale PPPs, we'll have to invite foreign capital. And I think foreign capital come in, provided the process is transparent, amount of corruption, and there's good governance. I think they will come in. So there is tremendous space for PPPs in the infrastructure in Sri Lanka because the government has no space to invest. They don't have money to invest now. The private sector can invest up to a certain point, but foreign capital can come into that area, and there's tremendous potential for development of infrastructure, in my view, on the PPP basis.
So my guest this evening was Mr. Duminda Hulangamuwa, Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Of course, there is an all-important debate that is taking place on Thursday, that is the 29th of August. This is the first ever economic policy debate which will be taking place, facilitated, of course, by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. There will be 4 representatives who will be presenting the economic visions of 4 main presidential candidates. Let me just jog your memory on that. Shehan Semasinghe, Member of Parliament and State Minister. He will be representing the incumbent President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Dr. Harsha De Silva, Member of Parliament, will be representing opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma will be representing the presidential candidate of the National People's Power, Anrukumara Disanayaka. And finally, Professor Ranjit Bandara, parliamentarian, will be representing parliamentarian Nama Rajapaksa, who is, of course, the presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna. Mr. Duminda Hulangamuwa himself will be one of the moderators of the session, alongside Ms. Kasturi Chelaraja, who will also be a moderator of the session. This debate will be happening on Thursday, the 29th of August, from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. It will be live streamed on the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce social media platforms, as well as Newsfirst's social media platforms. So anyone who can't make it there in person or physically can log in to any of these social media platforms and gain access to this debate and grow your knowledge on what each candidate has in store for Sri Lanka's economic policies and their vision to drive Sri Lanka's economic growth before you go into the polls on the 21st of September. That being said, thank you very much, Mr. Hulangamuwa, for joining me for an insightful and engaging discussion, taking time out of your very busy schedule to join me this evening. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Certainly. And that's a wrap of Face to Face, a special edition of Face to Face for tonight. We will be back again on Face to Face tomorrow. Do take care. Have yourself a great night.